I hope I just told you in Spanish that it should be clear that if we talk about the Russian assets, and I imagine that I have a full house, not because you want to hear me speak about competitivity, the housing problem in the European Union, our approach to the membership of Moldova and Ukraine to the European Union Cluster 1, the situation in the Middle East, European defense and security, competitivity and the double transition. If so, please ask me questions. If not, I suppose most of you are here to talk about the frozen and immobilized Russian assets. And maybe it is important to underline, first and foremost, that Belgium does not want to see €1 of that money returned to Russia. The philosophy has always been, and that's normal if you talk about immobilized assets, which are sovereign assets, it's central bank money. We're not talking about the frozen assets, to be very clear, because I noticed that there is a lot of mix-ups and a lot of colleagues mix these terms up, which you shouldn't do, because legally everything you do and everything you say is of course of utmost importance. Frozen assets belong to diverse beneficiaries and are not at play here. We're talking about the immobilized assets, the sovereign assets, the central bank money. You could compare it what happened with the war that Iraq waged in Kuwait. They also invaded the country. Their sovereign assets were also immobilized, and after the war the money was used for the reconstruction of Kuwait. And that is until now the philosophy that Europe has followed, and other nations as well. There are immobilized assets in Japan. 50 billion is in Japan in immobilized assets, and there are amounts in immobilized and frozen assets in the UK, in Canada, in the United States, in Switzerland, and other nations. And they're all immobilized. So the entire world reacts in exactly the same way. You immobilize central bank money, you wait until there is a peace treaty, and in that peace treaty you get a signature of both parties, and there is an agreement on what should be done with the money. And our philosophy has always been, at the end of the day, Ukraine needs to be reconstructed. That will probably take hundreds of billions of euros to repair the destruction. And at that moment, the Russian money can be used because it will be also legally possible in the framework of a peace treaty. Now, the proposals that can be made, because until now I haven't seen any concrete texts yet, because I haven't read any concrete texts yet, but I have been explained, of course, what a new proposal can look like, and the new proposal is that we are going to do something that has never been done before. We're gonna not confiscate, because we cannot use the word confiscate, but if it looks like confiscation, smells like confiscation, and it talks like confiscation, maybe you could call it a sort of confiscation. You're gonna take the money, but it is now at the ECB. So Euroclear has all kinds of assets that have turned into cash. The cash is deposited at the ECB. You have windfall profits that are used to pay the G7 loan, and then you have tax money in Belgium on these windfall profits that is used for the bilateral aid to Ukraine. That's the chicken and the golden eggs. The eggs are given to Ukraine. The chicken is sitting at the ECB, but it is the chicken of Euroclear which represents the claim that Russia has on its sovereign assets. If you take the chicken and you start eating it by giving loans to Ukraine, saying you can start and eat the chicken, then you're in a different situation. Legally, you're in a totally different situation. Can this be legal? This is a very good question. It's a very good question. There are no clear answers. If you ask lawyers, they usually present you also with a big bill. You have to pay them an enormous amount of money, and then they give you a text that you don't understand. And then you get a second opinion of another lawyer that you even have to pay more, and that you don't understand as well. And is it possible? Is it not possible? There's no clarity on that. In Japan, they have decided not possible. Central bank money is immune. We're not going to touch it. There's a certain logic to this. Even during the Second World War, this did not happen. Immobilized money is immune. It's like an embassy. You don't touch it. You don't use it. So it's a first. We're in uncharted waters. Is it legal? Is it not legal? That's the very first question. What is the legal basis to do this? It is unclear. It's a matter that needs to be solved. Before we can go forward on this, I think everybody would sleep better if we would know that the legality of it is underpinned. We will in any case be buried in litigation. That seems like a certainty. I don't think that Russia will take this in a nice way. I heard a Belgian journalist on television say, "Oh, I have the impression that for Putin this money is already written off." I do not have that impression. This is not exactly what we hear from Moscow. Moscow has told us that if we touch the money, we would feel the consequences until eternity, which seems to be a long time, eternity. So they will do countermeasures. That seems to be very logical. That can take the form of counter-confiscations of Western money frozen in banks in Russia, confiscation of Western-owned companies, European companies, Russian courts making decisions on confiscations, and maybe making these decisions also valid in other jurisdictions that are friendly to Russia. Russia also has allies. And if Russian courts start saying we're going to seize European assets, can take all kinds of forms of assets. They could turn against the clients of Euroclear, which is the entire world, against the shareholders of Euroclear, companies of European origin, you name it. And they could imagine countermeasures against it in Russia and maybe also in allied countries. So it's risky business. I think an analysis on what the consequences could be would be helpful before you take a decision, that everybody who is on board, if all the member states are on board with this decision, that they need to know what they are risking. But of course, besides the counter-confiscations and the countermeasures, we will be buried in litigation. There is already a lot of litigation running. Because, of course, we have a treaty with Russia. It is the Belgo-Luxembourgian investment treaty. And that foresees arbitrage and proceedings. And already on the frozen assets, we are under arbitrage. Yeah? There's one of the oligarchs, Mr. Friedman, who is claiming countries with frozen assets like Luxembourg. He has 8 billion there, frozen, not immobilized. And he's claiming them for 16 billion. That's not very nice. That's like the sword of Damocles hanging over your head, claims of not only the money, but also damages. So it could double the amount. If you take 180 billion, you could get for 360 billion of claims. And then you have to add all the frozen assets to that, who are already in litigation. That's enormous. That's enormous. So a legal basis is not a luxury. It's not a detail. Having a bit of legal certainty might help you and convince you that you will not start losing all that litigation and all these proceedings, because this could become very, very, very costly. So that's the first issue. If you talk about the Russian assets, is it legal? What are you based on? On which article in which treaty are you based on? Are you basing your decision on to go forward on taking the assets? Then there are a few more problems that need to be solved. The next one is probably the most important one, and you don't have to take it from me. We had the good fortune of having Christine Lagarde present at the Council together with Patrick Donoghue to give the semestral review on the Eurozone and the situation, the economic situation on the Eurozone and our monetary situation of the Eurozone. And of course, this was the opportunity to ask Christine Lagarde, how do you see this? The idea of taking money that is on your balance, ECB balance, using it for something else. Is this possible? And she said, well, it can be done. She didn't, of course, she's not a lawyer. She did not say it's legal or it's illegal. It can be done, but there is one very important condition, and that is that the cash needs to be guaranteed. The moment that Russia can actually claim the money for whatever reason, because a court decided so, the sanctions are lifted, there is a peace treaty that does not obligate Russia to pay back, there's a peace plan, you could read Truth Social. Mr. Trump has a 12-point plan. In that plan, you see that the money has to return to Russia. Literally, it has to return to Russia. 300 billion of immobilized assets. That's probably a figure worldwide. Have to return to Russia, and then Russia has to pay Ukraine for the damage. Well, in the hypothesis that Mr. Trump, who is a very strong man, gets this done in a year, then the cash needs to be there immediately. So in case the Russian claim becomes tangible, for whatever reason, you need in a very short amount of time to be able to guarantee that the cash is there. This is of course a problem. If you take the cash and you give it to the Ukraine, the cash is gone. It's not there anymore. So somebody needs to guarantee the moment it goes wrong, then in a very short amount of time, 140, 160, it depends on how much you use. The money that you've used, let's say 140, that's the figure I've been reading, 140, that you need to put 140 billion euros on the table immediately. And these guarantees have to be not vague, but concrete, because of course the markets are watching. And if they see, you take out of Euroclear 140 billion, you start doing things with that, but you do not have a backstop for that in cash, there's no solution for your guarantee, there's no real solution, then there will be a market reaction. Then you will undermine the trust in Euroclear as a financial institution. The Euroclear holds trillions of euros in reserve. If there is a breach in the trust in the financial system, there will be very heavy consequences for our financial system and even for the Eurozone. So that guarantee has to be very, very solid. And that is, of course, a big question. Who's going to give that guarantee? Is it the member states? It's a question. I asked my colleagues, is it you? Is it the member states? Because the European Commission can make an ordinance saying we will take the money, but the European Commission cannot obligate a member state to sign a guarantee. That's a sovereign competence, which means that everybody has to put a signature on a paper saying I'm responsible for X% of that operation, and the moment it goes wrong, I will immediately pay the amount of cash if it's needed. I asked my colleagues who is ready, willing and able to sign that. Because you take the money from my country, it goes wrong. I am not able, certainly not willing, but even not able to, in a week's time, pay 140 billion euros out of Belgium's rich and full pockets. We're not able to do so, so I would imagine that everybody who's really for this decision, really wants to make it happen, also is ready, willing and able to sign the guarantee so that I can sleep quietly at night, knowing that if it goes wrong, if it goes sour, that the solidarity will make that the money is actually there. This question was not answered with a tsunami of enthusiasm around the table. I think maybe colleagues are reflecting on this now and know that certainly after Christine Lagarde confirmed that this is the case, the guarantees have to be there, they have to be concrete, they have to be immediate. So they heard it from Christine Lagarde, so I guess they all went home reflecting on this, saying, if we move forward on the Russian money, I actually morally am obligated to go before my parliament and say, if this goes wrong, we also have a problem, and I had to put my signature on a document for these guarantees. If it's not from the member states that this guarantee will come, it is for me a question mark from where else it could come. I have no answer to this question, and I did not receive an answer to this question, although it's an important one. That's the second problem, the guarantees. Then there is a third problem that Christine Lagarde put on the table that I also asked questions about, but nobody elaborated on it, but she spontaneously talked about it. That is, of course, the risk for the Eurozone. And her strong recommendation is that if you do an operation like that and you want the world to perceive it as a legitimate operation, that it would be good if you do not do it alone. And that is what I asked my colleagues also. I say, I understand why you're looking at Belgium, because we have the biggest chicken of the immobilized assets. The fattest chicken is in Belgium, but there are other chickens around. In the Eurozone, there are other countries with immobilized assets. There are 6. None of them have ever given any transparency on how much money they have. No transparency on the windfall profits of that money. No transparency on the tax income of that money. Actually, Euroclear is the only financial institution in the world that is implicated in the solidarity for Ukraine. There is at least as much money in the rest of the world. Trump says 300 billion. This means that half of it is in Euroclear and the other half is the world round. But nobody ever talks about this. Nobody ever volunteered to say, I also, Japan, 50 billion. I also have windfall profits. I also have tax money. I could offer that money to Ukraine. We're the only ones doing it. So you can imagine for me that it is a bit sour that we are finger pointed now as the unwilling country. Politico said that I'm a bad boy. A bad boy, me. How can you imagine that? Everybody confirmed that I'm a good boy. It was like I was assisting my own funeral. They all said, no, you're a good boy. It's like your funeral, everybody comes and say that you're very nice. I'm not a bad boy. We're the best boy in town. We're the best boy in town. If you talk about immobilized assets, we are the very, very best. And like I said, if you move, then you have to move together. And preferably with a non-Euro country. Okay, this also is a problem. If you want to create a perception that you're doing something that's legal, and if you want to avoid very negative attention for the Eurozone, then maybe those who have reserves in pound sterling, in Japanese yen, or in Canadian dollars, or in Norwegian money, or in Swiss francs, could volunteer to say, we'll help you. We are also, every day we say that we stand with Ukraine, so now we're going to put our money literally, or Putin's money literally where our mouth is, and we're going to move together with you to make this operation a success. So these are 3 issues. It took us a long time to discuss them. We discussed about this for hours. And then afterwards at the dinner, rediscussed it with Christine Lagarde, who gave her expert opinion, and also indicated that these problems that we put on the table are actually real. They're real. They're not imagined. They are not a question of not being willing or being reluctant. It's because they are real and they have to be solved. And the conclusion of the Council at the end of the day, if you look at the draft, you will see that it is short. And that it only says that there is a problem with the financing of Ukraine. This is true. Everybody thinks that this should be solved. 26 of the 27 want to solve the financial problem of Ukraine. I also. I'm ready, willing and able to do whatever it takes to help the Ukrainian ally. Let there be no doubt about this. And that the Commission has to work on proposals, plural, for solutions. Of proposals, plural, for a solution, single, to get this done. And the drafting also states the obvious, that the immobilized assets will stay immobilized until the end of the war, which was always, of course, the philosophy of the immobilized assets. So that's a no-brainer. But for the rest, it is a question mark. So I guess in this problem will return to the table, because time is running out. I think before the end of the year we need a solution to keep Ukraine in the war and to take care of their financial problems. I'm ready, willing and able to do so, and so I'm ready, willing and able to engage, as we are a particular member state, holding Euroclear, we are a particular member state, so I'm ready to engage with the Commission and other people who would might want to talk to me about it, to say, are there solutions for the problems that we put on the table? So to summarize, can we make it legal? And what are the risks and the countermeasures that we face? The legality and the countermeasures of Putin. can we convince another country outside of the Eurozone, in the Eurozone, maybe the 6, and can these 6 convince another countries to move along with us? And third problem, and I think the biggest problem, how do you guarantee that the cash is there immediately when it goes wrong? If we find solutions for these 3 problems, then maybe we can go ahead. If not, maybe another option can be put on the table to get the financing of Ukraine on the road. That's about it. I see some questions. Let's start with the nice lady on the last row. That's you. I notice if I say nice lady that you think I'm talking about somebody else.
Financial Times. Have you spoken to Zelensky today about this, and does he understand your concerns? And if the concerns are addressed, is it still realistic to go for the December Ukraine timeline to agree then to get the money to Ukraine early 2026?
Did we talk to Zelensky? Yes, we did. He was present. He comes every time, but usually he's by video link, and he gives a report on the situation in Ukraine. This time he was physically there. He gave a report, and of course we engaged him on the problems he's facing. But I'm reluctant to go into details on what he said. It's always very delicate. It's a part of the meeting where you also have to leave your phone in the box outside. And there's a reason for this, of course. The enemy is also listening, so I'm rather reluctant to go into details about what Zelensky said and what we asked him. Let's not go into that. Your second question, is it the timing realistic? It is, of course, as we say in our beautiful Dutch language that you speak, it's 5 before 12. It's very urgent. We have a few weeks, and the problems are not to be underestimated. That needs to be solved. So I think we will have to burn the midnight oil, and all the legal teams that we have will burn the midnight oil. Their bills will even become more important and higher. I clearly chose the wrong profession in my life. If I see how much you have to pay a lawyer that is specialized in financial issues. And they will probably write papers, and these papers will be compared with each other, and at the end of the day there will be the moment of truth. Is this tangible? Is this possible? And then, of course, the even more important question, if they confirm what is necessary, will others be able to comply? It could become an issue of every individual member state taking the engagement to make this work. And of course, that's not a question that I can answer. You have 26 others to ask this question to. We'll go from the back row to the front row, but please.
Thank you, Prime Minister. You already explained us all these concerns you had during the Copenhagen summit. So do you imply that in 3 weeks' time you didn't receive any answer to your broad questions you put forward?
Not.
So do you have a feeling that other member states between the 26 share of your concerns?
Okay, delicate questions. In Copenhagen, I actually put 10 points on the table, 10 concrete points. I didn't repeat all those 10 points today. So you could call that progress. We limited us to the essential points, which are really important. Other matters are of general concern and are sometimes discussed and maybe, I will not say met, but I did not repeat them. Others are still there, but I chose to focus on what is really essential, and what was also confirmed later in the evening by Christine Lagarde when she put her reflections on the table corresponded 100% with the questions I asked. And so I think we're at the heart of the problem now. And so that's, if you could call that progress since Copenhagen, that's progress. We know the essence of the problem, what is really problematic and what needs to be done. How do the others react to this? it's not. I'm not their spokesperson. I find these questions delicate. My impression is, of course, that many heads of government are a bit torn between their willingness to support Ukraine, which is outspoken. Most of them are very outspoken or willing to do that. And then, of course, if you're a politician and you want to do something and you see a pot of gold, it becomes almost irresistible not to use the gold to do what you will. So that's one component. The other component is, of course, that they have to acknowledge that these questions are real, that the risks are real, and that the questions are real, and that the guarantees needs to be there. And it is a bit of a mixed feelings atmosphere around the table, saying yes, we want to support Ukraine, and no, we never want to give Putin his money back. And it would be almost poetic that Ukraine is supported with Russian money. It's a Robin Hood story. Yeah, it's for public opinion. It's a bestseller. You take Putin's money, you use it to give it to Ukraine. It's like a novel. That's very tempting, but on the other hand, the backside of the envelope is real. And if you sketch it, and I can be very charming, sketching problems very analytically, the reaction is, darn, this doesn't seem to be so simple. And in the answers I got, I'm not going to say what my colleague said, that's not up to me, but I can say that everybody reacted, and in their reaction, everybody mentioned what I said. I was at the focus of the meeting, which is always very nice. Yes, lady next to you.
Thank you. What was the decisive argument within the discussion that made the conclusion go tighter?
That changed the drafting,
Yeah.
from a long text to a very short text. Drafts are, of course, negotiated, and normally Mr. Costa has a very good habit to invest a lot in the drafting beforehand, which is excellent. So you can have good debates, and you don't have to lose time in pushing words and commas around to get a good draft. This time, paragraph 8 was more or less undrafted. There was a draft, but that was not negotiated beforehand. And Antonio also said this to the Council. I have a paragraph 8, but I received amendments from Belgium to paragraph 8, and they have not been negotiated. Most colleagues, I noticed, weren't even informed of the amendments that we put on the table. They literally didn't know them. I had some colleagues asking me the text, what are these amendments? And of course, these amendments are answers to the questions. Not answers to the questions, but we amended the text in a way that the questions are put in the text, and that the necessity for answers is also articulated. So at the end of the day, there were two choices. Either you take the amended text by our team, which says, okay, we want to move forward on the Russian money, but then these are the problems and they need answers, and before you come back, concrete answers need to be on the table for mutualization, the guarantees, everything was in there. The other option is, of course, to push the text back to the minimum, saying we have a problem and we want a solution. And that is what happened. At the end of the day, it was reduced to the bare minimum, saying Ukraine has a problem, we want to help them, the Commission needs to find solutions, and we need to talk about this. There were two options. Either you do full Monty, and every problem is covered, or you do the short Monty. That doesn't exist in English, that expression, but you know what I mean, the bare minimum, just describing the problem, and which means that it is postponed. And that probably next time we will have the debate again, hopefully then based on text about the legality, a proposition for the guarantees, and maybe with the engagement of non-Euro countries and Euro countries who have immobilized assets to join us. That would be brilliant if in a few weeks' time we are there. A good legal basis, protecting us from litigation and countermeasures, an engagement of non-Euro countries saying we'll go with you in this non-confiscation of the money, and then the guarantees that the cash will always be there if needed. Then we can talk. I'm not going to elaborate on other options. There are, of course, always options if you want to create money in a short amount of time. We did it in the COVID crisis as well. If Europe wants to create money, it can create money. This is called debt. But of course, this is also a very sensitive topic. But the big advantage of debt is that you know it. You know how much it is. You know how long you will bear it. You know exactly who's responsible for it. The disadvantage of the Russian money is that you have no idea how far the litigation will go, how long it will take, and what you will encounter in problems. So are there other options? Yes. But of course, some of these options demand unanimity around the table. And this could also be very problematic. We're going to the next. I'm coming to you, don't worry. Just patience. Patience. Yeah.
Yes, Stefan, Europe table, a short question. The idea of headroom as a guarantee, is this one option that could be used for this one question of the
what exactly?
Headroom of the MFF?
Yeah, the MFF could of course be the solution, but that starts in 2028. Our problem, the finance, das Finanzierungsbedarf Ukraines, Sie sind Deutsche, doch? Schweizer, aber Sie sprechen Deutsch. Das Finanzierungsbedarf Ukraines für die nächsten 2 Jahre, das ist das Problem. Und danach können wir das aufnehmen in das europäische Haushalt. Aber nicht in 26, nicht in 27. 28, und das kurzfristig haben wir ein großes Problem. Ja?
Jorge Valero with Bloomberg. 2 questions. First, you said that the guarantees should be immediately available. There was some discussion at some point about having a liquidity safety net, like some sort of paid-in capital, I assume. For you, this is a requirement that there should be some capital paid in advance, and how much should that be? If that should be the 140 billion in advance, which sounds a bit maybe a bigger request. And secondly, if I may as well, I don't hear you saying that one of your demands is a change in the sanctions regime, which is another discussion ongoing to, instead of having a 6 months renewal, longer periods or open-ended. Is this something that for you it's essential to have a solid legal system, or is not a must?
It would be nice to get the sanctions valid until the end of the war or until Europe decides otherwise. The prolonging of the sanctions every 6 months always is a nervous moment because one of the countries is not aboard. You all know who it is. And we have invented the solution of saying this is the Europe of 26 or we are the Europe of 27 minus 1. But of course, if the -1 starts to be really problematic and says, I will use my veto and this decision cannot be made to prolong sanctions, that could pose an imminent threat if you confiscate money, because the moment the sanctions fall, 3 seconds later, Russia will knock on the door to get its money back. So it would be nice if you would have a solution for that as well. I didn't even mention that, because I'm a nice person and I don't want to mention every problem. In Copenhagen I mentioned this as well. Then I still mentioned 10 problems. This one is not away. I just didn't mention it again, but you are so nice to ask the question. So that is also a problem that is still there. That still is lurking there. We seem to be all right. It's become more or less a tradition. Anything on Ukraine is 26. Seems like Hungary is fine with that. They are not engaging in the discussions, and it's almost like automatic. It isn't even openly said anymore during the meeting. Everybody knows this is the 26, and next topic we're 27 again. So we seem to be fine for the moment, but it would be better to have a structural solution if you start seizing money for the sanctions as well. The liquidity safety net, is this a demand? Yes, of course this is a demand. This is the guarantee. It's liquidity. It needs to be there immediately. Immediately. If it goes wrong, you need the liquidity immediately. It has to be there. That's the safety net. Is that something that I demand? I cannot help but underline that Christine Lagarde said this is the absolute condition before you can go forward. if you take the money and the market sees that there is no liquidity solution for when it goes wrong, you're immediately in trouble. Immediately in trouble. Because this would undermine the trust in the entire financial system of Europe. Again, I think I already mentioned it, Euroclear holds trillions of assets. Trillions. If the idea is that they can be politically taken and that there is no liquidity guarantee, if this happens, that seems like a very bad idea. So the liquidity safety net has to be there. It has to take the form of a cash guarantee. How much should it be? Very good question. Is it the amount of the money that you use, or is it the amount plus the amount of potential damage of litigation? To give you the example of oligarch Friedman, he has 8 billion frozen in Luxembourg, but he claims for 16 billion. Will he win or will he lose? We don't know. But once you go in uncharted waters, you're not only risking the money you use, but also the damages, because legally you're not certain that you are allowed to do what you're doing. So how strong should the liquidity safety net be? Very strong. It should be very strong. It should be actually the amount of the damage that you suffer when it goes wrong. So yeah, probably if you would divide it amongst the member states, it would not be described in the terms of amounts, but in percentages. If you have X% of the European GDP, you have to take X% of the risk. Is it 140 billion? Then it is X% of 140 billion. Are the damages 200 billion? Then it's X% of 200. That's a liquidity safety net. Yes?
Hi, I'm Alec Quinn for Euronews. Thank you for this. Just on Christine Lagarde's recommendation that you should move with a non-euro economy to minimize the risks, is that for you a prerequisite? And if so, do you expect to have talks with any other economies before the December summit?
Me personally, no. I'm not the European Commission. I'm not responsible to find solutions for all problems. I, of course, offer my help and our expertise, but our expertise is mainly around Euroclear and the assets. We have a lot of people working on that, as you can imagine. We are already suffering from a lot of litigation. We have a lot of knowledge on that, on the risk and the litigation and the liquidity in Euroclear. This we know. I don't think it's up to me to start calling Japan and other countries to say, hey, I have a great idea. Why don't you join us in confiscating money or quasi-confiscating money? I think it's up to other people to do that. I think the most likely candidate is probably the United Kingdom, because they have been talking about the use of assets for quite a long time. But they have always been so nice to talk about my assets. But if they have so many ambition to use immobilized assets, probably they will have no objection using their own immobilized assets as well. But we'll see. We'll see. There's also Canada. There's other countries, United States as well. Japan is the first country who actually already decided that central bank money can never be touched, which is what is legal. Until a few months ago, everybody thought that that was what international law prescribed. You don't touch central bank money. We never did. Yeah, the nice gentleman.
In Copenhagen 3 weeks ago, you said that maybe as an alternative solution, the coalition of the willing should become the coalition of the will.
Mm-hmm.
Did you table that proposal again today? Is this one of the options that the Commission should investigate next week?
Well, I mentioned in Copenhagen, but I also mentioned this at the last meeting of the coalition of the willing. The coalition of the will should become the coalition of the bill. When we gathered in Paris at the Élysée, when we were all there, I said, can we also become the coalition of the bill? Since Paris and Copenhagen, I could give you the number of phone calls I got from coalition of the willing members to say that's a great idea, but it tends to zero. It actually is zero.
So there is no alternative to the using the frozen assets?
There is always an alternative. Maybe there are alternatives possible. We all want to support Ukraine. The coalition of the will is there saying we stand with Ukraine, whatever it takes. We've said that many, many, many times. So if we talk, let's be honest, about a financial need, I've read a figure of 45 billion a year to keep Ukraine afloat. That's not a lot of money. Huh? If you look at who is in the coalition of the will, 45 billion, it's not the end of the world. Huh? I think the countries who are a member of the coalition of the willing, if they are willing to pay the bill, they could easily do so. 45 billion is a lot of money, but if you look who's member of that club, it should be doable. But that it's a question of money, mouth, putting them together. And then you have an alternative solution, which would be legally a lot more solid. Because if you would put that money on the table and you would lend it to Ukraine, the logic could also be that the money that is immobilized could be used as a warrant. If we all think that at the end of the war Putin will never get his money back, then you shouldn't be afraid of lending Ukraine money, because there's a warrant. Of course, a cynical person would ask, who's going to finance the reconstruction then? You can only spend the euro once. That's a question because I'm so nice that I didn't ask today. If you take all the Euroclear money, and you've always said this will be used to reconstruct Ukraine, if you use it all for the war ends, you have €0 left for the reconstruction of Ukraine. And who's going to pay for that? On whose door is Ukraine going to knock to say, help us please, for the reconstruction of our country? It will not be Putin, because he said, I already, j'ai déjà donné, hein? I already lost my assets. It will be us again. And you can only spend the euro once. Huh? If you do it now, then you don't have it at the moment where you could legally use it, and where immobilized assets have been used before in history, and where you have legal ground beneath your feet to do it. So I would prefer an alternative solution, but again, I'm only poor little Belgium. The only thing I can do is point out where the problems are and to gently ask solutions for the essential problems. I didn't even mention all this, just the essential problems. I think we're on the front row now, so thank you for your patience.
Thanks, thank you. Thomas Mandelson at Euractiv. I have two questions. So one on the guarantees.
Mm-hmm.
So, am I right in thinking that you want guarantees from all 26 other member states, including Hungary, or would you be okay with a situation where Hungary, for instance, wasn't involved? I mean, it didn't back the conclusions that were agreed today regarding Ukraine. So, is there a minimum number of member states that you would want to back these guarantees for you?
I need a liquidity safety net, as the nice gentleman has put it so eloquently, a liquidity safety net. It's not up to me to say who needs to sign guarantees. You're a journalist, you can easily call 26 member states and ask them if they would be willing and able to sign guarantees for this operation. They all understood now, if they listened to Christine Lagarde carefully, and I think they did, they all understand now what is necessary. And that is not just Belgium that says guarantees are necessary, it's the ECB who says without these kind of guarantees for the cash, you cannot go forward on this. It's way too risky. So I think any member that was present today understood, if we cannot go forward without a guarantee, it has to come from somewhere. And I don't think the Commission has a saving accounts with 200 billion euros on it. I've never seen it. So it has to come from somewhere. And the somewhere is, of course, the member states.
And has any member state said to you, well, either publicly today or in private, that they would be willing to provide guarantees, any at all, or not?
That's a delicate question. Okay. I could answer that question, but I'm unwilling to do so. I joined the coalition of the unwilling. I don't want to avoid questions, but it's a bit delicate. Let's not say that it was not an overwhelming number of people who said.
Okay, and one more question.
Not overwhelming is very, very few, but not zero. Not zero.
Okay. One more question. I mean, so a lot of member states, including Germany, have already started speaking about not just the loan itself, but how the money should be spent, including Friedrich Merz, obviously. What do you make of this? I mean, given the obstacles that you've laid out, do you think this discussion is premature?
That's probably a sign from God that I have to leave this room as quickly as possible. He wins the prize for asking the best questions. These are the questions you all should have asked. He's the best journalist in the room. These are the very dangerous questions. If you take the money, how should you spend it? Let's say that question becomes relevant the moment you can spend the money, and not the day before. But I have noticed, I cannot help but notice, that people are already reflecting on this question. If you start spending it, how can you spend it? You can spend it on military aid. That means that you have to buy materials. That means that these materials are coming from somewhere. A producer, a company. That's interesting. If you have a producer in a company. Let's say that people have might be interested in these things and in these questions. I'm not going to say any word further. I have the right to remain silent.
Si vous n'obtenez pas les garanties au prochain sommet, est-ce que vous aurez la force de vous opposer? Est-ce que ce n'est pas une victoire à la Pyrrhus que vous avez obtenue ce soir? Parce qu'en face de vous, il y a l'Allemagne qui veut absolument faire ce prêt, qui veut utiliser les avoirs russes. Merz l'a répété maintenant pendant sa conférence de presse. Est-ce que ce n'est pas une victoire à la Pyrrhus?
Vous êtes un journaliste francophone belge, hein? Oui, typique. Oui, c'est typique. Je viens d'obtenir une victoire, hein, 5 minutes après, moi, c'est pas une vraie victoire, hein, monsieur. On verra. Donc, je pense que... Non, allez, je plaisante, ne t'en fais pas. Je pense que ce qu'on a obtenu aujourd'hui, c'est que tout le monde a quitté la salle en pleine conscience des problèmes qui existent. Hein. Notamment, l'exposé de Madame Lagarde était excellente parce qu'elle ne savait pas les questions que j'ai posées aux autres, mais elle a confirmé avec ses considérations. Hein, c'est même pas moi qui a demandé à Madame Lagarde son avis là-dessus, et il y a des autres qui ont demandé. Donc ça démontre quand même qu'ils sont en train de réfléchir. J'ai même pas eu la chance de poser cette question. Des autres étaient avant moi déjà pour dire on a discuté des avoirs gelés, des avoirs immobilisés. Qu'est-ce que vous pensez là-dessus? Et Madame Lagarde a fait une analyse. Donc tout le monde a quitté la salle avec les problèmes en tête et avec... je pense que personne va revenir avec l'idée que sans solution concrète pour ces problèmes, on peut encore avancer. Parce que c'est pas seulement le problème de la Belgique si on le fait. Les risques sont pour tout le monde, les risques sont systémiques pour la zone euro et pour chaque citoyen de l'Europe qui peut être concerné par des contre-mesures. Donc, est-ce qu'on peut encore nous présenter une solution qui ne nous plaît pas? Je ne peux pas l'exclure. Mais je ne pense pas que quelqu'un pense encore de pouvoir revenir avec une histoire qui n'est pas très élaborée et qui ne contient pas au minimum des réponses réelles, concrètes sur les problèmes qui ont été posés ici. Donc ça reste à voir. I thought you were the last one, but now others have joined in the back of the room. But let's listen to the lovely lady before we get to you. Debt is D-E-B-T, huh? Okay, then I got it correctly. If Russians say you will feel consequences until eternity, you start thinking about debt in the other way, in the other sense of the word, because I think that's what you're actually talking about. Would I be in favor of debt? As I said, who am I? I'm not the one who has to make a proposal to the council. I have other problems, but this is not my competence. It's not my duty to do so. I just described to you theoretically what the advantages of debt are. The advantage of debt is that you know the exact amount and you know who's responsible for it and you know for how long it's going to haunt you. Although Europe has a specialty of making that period longer than foreseen, if you look at the RFF. For COVID, we did exactly the same thing. We had no money, we printed the money, and we said somebody will pay it back later. We're still wondering who it will be, and when it will be, and how it will be done. But you have an amount of certainty, and it cannot become your problem. It is a European problem. That's the advantage you have if you create that. But is that a very good solution? No, it's never a very good solution. Is it an evident alternative for using the frozen or the immobilized assets? It could be if you get unanimity on it, and that might be the real political problem with that. There you need 27 to say okay.
And would you say okay?
I would be. I am a loyal ally of Ukraine. I stand with Ukraine. I think we need to get this problem solved. If we say, and we mean it, that a strong Ukraine is the best defense for Europe and the best guarantee to protect us against Russian aggression and to protect our democratic values, and that we sympathize with the population of Ukraine. If you say all that, and we've been saying that for 3 years, you cannot turn your back on the country saying, oh, we're out of money. Good luck to you. The problem needs to be solved. If tomorrow there would be a proposal to say we will take 45 billion euros of debt for the next 2 years and then we integrate that 45 millions in the multi-annual framework, I would be 100% pro. I think that's not even very difficult. These are of course enormous amounts of money, but at the level of Europe and at the level of a European budget, it's details. It's small potatoes. But do we have unanimity? That's, I'm afraid that is the real problem. Yes, the gentleman in the back of the room. Let's start with the man who has his shirt outside his trousers.
Jacob Hanke from Handelsblatt. Thank you, Prime Minister. There's one problem that you didn't mention as part of your 3 problems, but I wonder if that means that for you it's okay. And it's for the Belgian budget, the 1.2 billion that you're counting with.
Ah, that's a very interesting, das ist eine gute Frage. Sie sind Deutscher auch?
Ich bin Deutscher und Spanier.
Okay. Let's do it in English then. That's a very good question. I noticed, of course, that the reputation of my country has been slandered. I said Euroclear is the only financial institution that actually is engaged for Ukraine. Other countries, if you combine their assets, have just the same amount as Belgium. What happens with all that money? Nothing. So I think the finger pointing needs to stop. I told my colleagues in Copenhagen, and I told them again today, if there is somebody who wants to take the entire Euroclear balance, Russian, not the trillions, just the Russian billions, wants to take it and will sign for all the risks, he can have it. That would be the happiest day, well, maybe not the happiest day of my career, but it would be a happy day to see that money leave Belgium. I want to get rid of it. 1 billion is a lot of money, tax money each year, but it is a detail if you compare it to the litigation problems that we are having and the risks we are already facing. I want to get rid of that money. If you want to take it, you are German, you're a big country, please take it. Take it to Berlin, take all the risks with you. You can keep the billion. I will add to the offer an armored car and some bodyguards, because you will need them. So this really has to stop. This is really outrageous. The idea that we have a position because we want to keep the billion of tax money. I want to repeat again, I went to Kiev and I said I have 1 billion of tax money, so you can count on 1 billion each year until 2029, the end of my term, if it will take this long. In Belgium, you're never sure if you're prime minister for a week or for a year. It's a very complicated country. I'm not going to explain it to you. But I was in Kiev. I said, I have tax money, Russian tax money. I don't want it. You can have it, and I can promise it to you each year until the end of my term. This is one of the very first things I did. That was to take that train that you have to take from Poland to Kiev, to give that message to Zelensky, not to be accused of the fact that I would pick Putin's money in my pockets. So I'm very glad this esteemed members of the international press might write this message down. This really has to stop, because we're getting that feedback from the Ukrainians saying, there's something with the tax money. We're getting the feedback from the Treasury in the United States who's calling us, what about the tax money, your war profiteers? This is something they didn't invent themselves. These are colleagues that are bad-mouthing us behind our backs. It's not very nice.
And follow up, if I may, I'll put my shirt in.
That's always a very good idea.
In the White House.
Yes. But I'm not kicking you out of the room. And I'm not saying that you don't have the cards to ask a question.
Good, no. I appreciate that again. But basically, do you think one is something that can be solved politically, it's the guarantees, but the other is a very legal problem. Is this legal or not? What is your opinion on this?
Well, my opinion, I'm an historian, so I'm not a lawyer, I'm a normal person and a very poor person. So my opinion doesn't account for much. If you ask lawyers, they give you very complicated text that you do not understand, and it is a question mark. It's a question mark. Is it legal? If you take the money and you get the liquidity net in place, that would probably be as close to legal as you can get it. Nobody has ever done this before. Immobilized assets, even during the Second World War, you were a German, even in the Second World War, when the world was a little bit angry with Germany, even then, the immobilized assets were never touched. So this is really uncharted waters. Is it legal? At least it is a stretch. Until a year ago, everybody thought it was illegal. Japan is still saying, nope, immune, will not touch it, not legal. We are now, for the first time in history, going to say, maybe it can be legal. There's a lot of desperation in this. We want the money, so we want to believe that it's legal. And probably we will write a nice text that we will pay some law firm a lot of money for, that can make us believe that it's legal. But what I understood also from Christine Lagarde's explanation is that using the money with a liquidity safety net, so you can at each moment reimburse Euroclear towards Russia, is the closest to legal you will get. Besser geht's nicht. But it could get a lot worse. Yes, I'm almost in my double shift now, so I'll wrap it up with the three last questions, if you don't mind. Yes.
Thank you. Mathieu Bagnoy asked at the National Intelligence Agency. First of all, thank you for doing this briefing, and especially in English, it's very transparent. Secondly, I would ask you a clarification. When you say that Russia is promising or menacing you to feel the brunt for eternity, is when you say you, is you Belgium or you Euro? This clarification that I would
that message was directed at Belgium. If you follow Russian media, they're always pointing out Belgium. I will not...
Okay, secondly,
okay.
Hearing you, it seems that, and you said it quite deliberately right now, that you would prefer another solution.
Mm-hmm.
So I would ask you, based on what you told us and what you saw in the room, do you think that this will carry on, or do you think that this idea stops here tonight?
My impression is that they will try to make it come alive. They know now exactly what issues needs to be addressed. I think they will try at the Commission to address these issues, and if they are sufficiently sure that they have addressed them, maybe try to put the proposal back on the table. If not, they have to find another solution. If you look at the draft of the text, it's very clear they have to come up with proposals, plural, for a solution, single. So anything is possible. But my impression is, because debt asks for unanimity, that probably this solution for the Commission is the way, if they get it done, to get their hands on money in a time frame that is necessary, which is the end of this year. It has become a very urgent issue. And I might add that if it is so urgent, maybe we should have started working on it and negotiating on it earlier. I would have preferred, and I've indicated that to some of my partners in this endeavor, to have discreetly worked on this and to only come out in the open when we had a solution for all problems. Because now I'm living a bit in the worst of both worlds. I'm having to explain very difficult things to you, and I do not know whether it's necessary. Will there be a proposal? And I do not know what the solutions are. But I am getting the negative backlash already, because in Moscow they are reading what you write and they don't like it. And they're turning against us. I get, of course, phone calls from all kinds of people all over Europe who have factories in Russia, who have assets in Russia, who have frozen money in Russia. saying this will probably mean that I will lose my factory, I will lose my assets, everything will be confiscated. All these people are now turning to me. And then there is that lovely Russian phrase of consequences until eternity, which leaves not a lot to the imagination. So I'm under high pressure from all kinds of, from the Russian side, from all kinds of people who have now understood that is, of course, a very risky endeavor, and that there could be consequences for them as well, also in the private sector. This is not a very nice situation. And I have to answer, I don't know. They all ask me, when will this happen and how will this happen? And the only thing is, I can't tell you. I don't know. There are still a lot of problems to be solved. I think it would have been better to avoid this by negotiating and coming with a proposal that was already very concrete, and then deciding this is tangible, we'll do it, or it is not tangible, we'll never speak about it. Now we're living in the worst of both worlds. We're already talking about it, this attracts a lot of negative attention, and we're not even sure if we can do it. So this is something I'm extremely unhappy with.